Greetings and welcome, everybody, to this week's episode of Polyweekly News. I'm your host, David Danto, and it's another episode of the David's Club. I have with me my good friend and industry analyst, David Maldow of Let's Do Video. Hi, David. How are you doing?
Hi, good to be here. Thanks for having
Oh,
me.
you're a frequent guest, so it's somebody that needs no introduction, but I'll let you introduce yourself anyway. This conversation comes out of a tweet that I saw you put up recently, where we're all kind of we're happy generally that it looks like the pandemic is starting to really wane, and we now have advanced boosters and we now have treatments that people use that seem to be working, and people are very happy to be going back to in-person conferences and going back to doing in-person things that they've done before. I've spoken many times before, and I won't rehash it about how the return to office. There is no return to office. The return to office is dead. The old office is dead. You'd have to create a new office for people to return to. So I won't talk about that. But it's interesting if we think about it. And David, I'll let you kind of talk about what the point was that you're making, is that we learned so much during the pandemic about virtual events and about how good it was that we could, let the disabled and people that are homebound and people who have difficulty traveling to be allowed to participate in so many of these conferences, really, opening the doors and pulling out a chair for them. And it looks like we've almost forgotten all of that as people go back to these real live events. So let me let you, people who might not know you, introduce yourself, tell people what you do, and let's have that conversation about, what we've learned and what we've accomplished and things like that. So take it away, Dave.
Sure. Thanks. And I'm David Maldow, the founder and CEO of Let's Do Video. And traditionally, Let's Do Video is an analyst firm, media firm, covering the video conferencing industry. Our sponsors are companies like Poly, Zoom, companies in the traditional video conferencing industry. But before the pandemic, I was getting very hot on live streaming. I live stream as a hobby. I live stream for Let's Do Video. And the timing was actually perfect because right before the pandemic hit, I gave a presentation at Zoomtopia, where I talked about production in live streaming, the kind of thing, the kind of stuff that you do in your weekly show, adding the graphics, adding the banners, making it look more than just like pushing directly to YouTube. And people were approaching me to produce their live events. Then the pandemic hit, and then more people started producing me to approaching me to produce their live events, including some who never heard of me, because when your company's called Let's Do Video, and people say we need to do video now, you come up in people's searches. So I did a lot of not hybrid. I'm hoping to do more hybrid. I guess that's where the conversation is going to go. But I did a lot of pandemic events, and I think the tweet that you saw, I basically said that most of the new clients that I got from this are saying, "Oh, we're so glad to be back to be in person," and I'm trying to convince them that they need to do hybrid. I believe that before the pandemic, I just flew to everything. And during the pandemic, I kind of had time to think and say, I don't like traveling that much. I would love to go to the 3 or 4 events a year that are really worth it, and the rest just do hybrid. And I don't think I'm the only one. So I'm really trying to push hybrid. But I've learned a lot from the events that I produce, and I could share some stories with you of successes, failures, what worked, what didn't work. It's almost like a Goldilocks. I have three stories. One was kind of too hot, one was too cold, one was just right. But all 3 of them, it's going to be a struggle to get to hybrid. And I don't know if you're with me. You fly all the time. I mean, your Twitter feed is all about travel. But are we just going back to live, or am I right? Do we need to hybrid this before I tell my
Well,
stories?
I do want to hear the stories, but let's flesh this out just a little bit as a conversation between us. In that the getting together for the last year. I was one of the few people that braved CES this year. It had 40,000 people, and it usually has something like 150, 160. 40,000 is a significantly large show, but not for CES. I was at NAB, I was at Infocom, we all call COVIDcom. I still have conversations to this day with people that were at Infocom that are talking about how they caught COVID there, which is really just an
I
amazing
got it
thing.
there.
But yeah, it's just unbelievable. But that's a story for another day. Although I do like the COVIDcom or InfoCough or whatever they were calling it. Anyway, the all of the shows this year, ISE, all the rest of them, were all not so much about the products as much as we liked seeing the products and touching and understanding what's going on. It was all about the people. It was all about hugging and talking and chatting and being social again, which is definitely something that we missed. So if you take that body of experience of us being back in person with our industry colleagues and the joy we felt of being back together after we've been deprived of it for so long, Think of how the opposite of that feels, that people who are disabled or in a wheelchair or can't travel to conferences or take care of relatives or whatever the reason is they can't travel, all of a sudden now having the doors opened for them to be available, to be in these sessions, to really understand what's going on. And then now that we're all traveling back again, to have those doors closed. It's almost an opposite reaction that they're experiencing. And it's one that I thought we all agreed that we wouldn't allow to happen going forward.
Yeah, I think we're just so happy to be, those of us who can be back in person are so happy to be back in person that we're not thinking about those things, and we really should be. And I get it, because I think of the three in-person events I went to this year, and they were kind of like the highlights of the year. One of them was Infocom, and despite getting COVID, I can't say I shouldn't have gone. I needed to go for business, for seeing you and other people that I don't get to see. It did feel great, and that was definitely, it's a silly word, but I keep saying because it's just the word that comes to mind. It was a kumbaya show. We're back, we're here, let's sing and dance and hug and get COVID. But the other two events I went to was a Poly event and a Zoom event. Both were under 100 people, and maybe that's part of the factor. 40,000 people is risky, 100 people maybe is safe. And the contacts I made, not just with the companies I was covering, not just with Poly and Zoom, but the 40 analysts that I see on Twitter all the time, and I've worked with occasionally. The coffee sessions with them was amazing. I mean, things are coming out of that. I'm in contact with people that I got out of contact with. I could see being so excited, just saying, forget about hybrid. I just want to get back in person. Hybrid is important, and was demonstrated at the Zoom event. The Zoom event just happened last week in San Jose. I had to fly all the way. I hate flying all the way across the country, but it was totally worth it. And they were experimenting with new things in hybrid, and it kind of worked. And it was a very happy feeling, because the remote attendees were saying in chat, where I could see them as an in-person attendee, oh my God, it feels like we're there. Hey, I could see everyone on camera wave to us. This is great. These sessions are amazing. I'm like, whoa, the remote hybrid attendees are happy. That's so hard to do. So it gave me hope that maybe we can move in that direction. But we're so at the beginning. What Zoom had to do to make that work, they had to hack the chat to make the chats connect. It's not in Zoom to do that yet. So we're just so not there yet. But when you see it work, it's like, oh, maybe I can stay home and not feel like I'm missing out if we start to get it right.
And the economics of the conferences and the people who put on the conferences lead folks to not want to do the hybrid, even though it's the right thing for society and the industry. They make their money on how many hotel rooms they've blocked and sold, and how many people attend and pay for the sessions. And it's I've always felt that we should at least create some type of online capability, even if there was a charge for it, so that people would be able to participate, and be involved remotely, the ones that can't travel. And we saw how important that was. I don't think there's enough of an incentive to do that yet, and that's something that we really have to all, as an industry, get behind. We had a great movement about diversity, a few years ago, that's still ongoing, that, I'm not going to appear on a panel that doesn't have any diversity, doesn't have any representation. We should also say, I'm not going to appear at a conference that doesn't have any content online for people that can't make it to the show. And we've talked about that, and everybody agrees with it, but it hasn't really become a movement yet. And we probably should, because it can be done well, as you point out, and there are ways and tricks,
Not
and that's
easy,
probably
though.
where your Goldilocks stories come in, that you can do this type of online community in conjunction with a live event really well. And it behooves us to do it, because we want to be as inclusive as we can be.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe that's where we can get into the stories of how not to do it right. If you want to go there now.
Oh, absolutely. Tell us about it. Give us your Goldilocks. Give us the three bears.
Okay, so the first one, actually, this one was okay. It wasn't, none of them were failures, but they all could have been better. The first one was just very anti-online, very anti-streaming. They were forced to do it because of the pandemic. And from the day they hired me, they were saying, I can't wait till next year we could do this in person again. They weren't excited about the potential. There are things that are better online. I mean, overall, I'd rather be in person, but there are parts of the online experience that could be really good. And they weren't about that at all. They just wanted to survive this nightmare. And with that sort of attitude, it's going to be rough. They also wanted to have their cake and eat it too. This was the part that was most problematic. Is they love the idea of the chat in an online webinar being interactive. The chat can ask a question, and the moderator or the presenter can take a break and answer questions. But they didn't want to do the risk of live webinars. They were afraid that one of the speakers wouldn't be able to connect, or wouldn't have her notes or his notes or whatever. So they pre-recorded, and they thought this would make it easier and less risky, but it made it harder and more risky. They pre-recorded all the webinars and had moderators play them pretending it was live as videos during the webinar, and then pausing it and bringing up the presenter to answer questions. There was so much timing involved, and the audience knew, like, oh, this part's pre-recorded, right? I mean, didn't fool anyone, and it was stressful, and it made more work for and it went off. We only had a couple of hiccups here and there, but their moderator team was stressed. I was stressed. There was 100 videos to pre-produce and send out to people. And when it was over, they just said, oh, we're never doing this again. We're never doing this again. And I'm like, that's, that porridge was too cold.
Self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah. And it was still a success. But it could have been so much more. The next one was, I don't know if this was too hot, but this person actually approached me when I gave the present. This is pre-pandemic, Zoomtopia 2019. I gave a presentation on doing exciting online events. And as I walked off stage, this guy grabbed me. I was like, I want to hire you to produce an event. And then the pandemic hit, and he goes, all my competition, they're canceling their in-person events. He'd never done an in-person event, and they're all going to attend my event. It's going to be the biggest thing. And it was. We had tens of thousands of viewers. It was tricky because this is at the very beginning of the pandemic, where everyone was figuring out these new event platforms, Bizzabo and Hey Summit. We use one of those. I think they've gotten better. I don't want to trash anyone, but when the pandemic first hit, they were basically platforms designed to sell tickets online to in-person events, and they quickly added places to put Zoom links. It was hard to find things. It was very, very stressful. It was a lot of frantic behind the scenes panic. Let's get things to work. But at the end, it was amazing. Everyone was able to get into their sessions. It was all over Zoom. The audience was so happy. This is the best. I mean, the feedback. This is the best session. This is the best event I ever went to. All that was a hit. Two things though. The reason he hired me is because I do all these crazy tricks in my stream. I don't know if I'm set up to show it, but I could fly across the screen in a dragon. Let me see. I could put you on a 3D skewed whiteboard behind me. So he hired me for the tricks. And then when it was time to do the show, he's like, let's hold off on the tricks and just do vanilla webinars. I'm like, okay, but it was fun. His problem is, his issue is, since he had never done an in-person event, he didn't understand the economics of putting on an event like this. He was paying his speakers. Now, there's nothing wrong with paying speakers. If I do work with companies like Poly, you might hire me to do a webinar where I'm paid to speak and give tips on hybrid workers for home. And then someone comes at the end and says how on my P15 camera looks extra good. That's
Wait a minute,
normal.
stop for a second. I got to make another notch here. We're at about 99% of people that are on the show that are using the P15 because it's the best camera. Just wanted to record it. Go ahead, you can keep
yeah, one thing to really say, my coloration isn't great. I need to get in some sun. I'm a little blotchy, but it's accurate. And I feel like other cameras, I really have to play with that brightness and contrast. I'm like, it looks okay, but I look yellowy. I look, I really have trouble getting the skin tone right, and the P15 seems to nail it.
The purple in your hair is actually the purple in your hair. Trust me, we've been together.
Yes, it is, which I need to redo. I'm back to my natural platinums.
No, David, you don't need to redo it. I'm sorry. Go on. Continue with your story.
So he was paying his speakers, and his speakers were other people in the industry who were selling books and selling stuff. It's imagine if I got a chance to speak at a keynote at Enterprise Connect, they wouldn't pay me for that. When Zoom does the keynote, Zoom sponsors Enterprise Connect because you get business from that. Mm-hmm. So he was paying all the speakers instead of having them pay him. The tickets were either too expensive or too affordable, depending on which tier. There were too many tiers of tickets. It was confusing. Basically, he didn't have the business model right. Even so, the fact that he was excited about online and he had energy about it and he wanted to do it, it was successful. It was profitable. So it was a win, but it could have been so much more. And the third story, and this is the one I'm most proud of. This is the Just Right story. This was the best thing I've done in this industry, probably. I mean, it was the most fulfilling thing. It was a girls' STEM event. Um, this amazing woman, Phyllis Russell, I believe is her name. I'm bad with names, but I love Phyllis. So I might have remembered it right. Phyllis does this event every year in the Northeast, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, I think New York, neighboring states, and they rent out this big hall, and or maybe they use a school or something, and they invite high school girls from all those areas to join in. It's STEM for girls, and they have women scientists that do presentations and they do experiments, and it's all hands on, and it's very close, and it's very not okay for pandemic. And she was heartbroken I'm not be able to do it this year, but she saw me online and saw my tricks and stuff, and was like, can we make this work? I'm like, we can do it. And she was on board for everything. And that made it work. Because I was thinking these high school girls, they've been doing classes on Zoom. They've been living on Zoom. They were probably, Zoom fatigue, which I don't think is fair to Zoom. It's meeting fatigue. It's just meeting fatigue became video fatigue. But they had it. And this was 2 days, 8 hours a day, and none of them logged off. And we could see them all, and they did not look bored. They were all, the teenagers, they're all with this and everything, but they were staring. And part of it was because the presenters, these women scientists, are just unbelievable. But they were down for the fun stuff. We had this one scientist from England. So I did these little cartoon graphics. I put her on a little. I did a map of the Atlantic Ocean and had a little cartoon plane flying across, and she's sitting there in the plane. It was hilarious. And she's a very serious, smart scientist. But you put her in a cartoon plane. It was the most adorable thing. She loved it. She had fun. The students loved it, and it was that sort of thing throughout it. One of the things, and I was so intimidated. The Google, not Google, Amazon at their warehouses, they have robots move everything around so that people don't get hurt. The scientists who program the robots, a lot of them are women. So we had 4 women scientists from Amazon who program robots. Could there be anything cooler? And they let me put them on cartoon robots and move them around as they were talking. So, it's the most serious thing. And it was Sesame Street. It felt like watching Sesame Street. And that was the biggest success. But I don't know if she's going to want to do hybrid. I think she might just want to focus on, and this is what breaks my heart. Because like you said, it's not just people who don't feel like flying, it's people who can't go. And, high school girls who are interested in STEM, who can't make it to the event, they deserve to see it. So I'm talking to her now when she does it again this year, at least have a hybrid.
Well, let's talk about those are great stories. I appreciate you sharing them with us. Let's talk about maybe, and we're doing this off the cuff here, so don't expect Shakespeare, but what are the elements that we learn that are good that we need to hold on to as we produce longer form events? Now, meetings, we understand, meetings, it's all about meeting equity. How can we make sure that everybody sees the content at the same time? Everybody sees each other's faces at the same time. The technology is improving with our director AI. We have the ability now to put everybody in a conference room instead of looking like down the bowling alley shot. Everybody has their own tile. We can see facial expressions and gestures. So that's good for short form content. But as we get into these long form sessions, how do we, what are the key points about making something that would be a great online plus live hybrid event? And off the top of my head, the first thing that I think of based on everything you said in your stories is it needs to be genuine. If you're going to call people for 7 o'clock in the morning on a Tuesday morning, wanting them to get up in the morning to be on there, you had better be live and interactive. If you're calling people for 7 a.m., as we learned at CES a couple of years ago, and at 7 a.m. you're playing me a YouTube video, that is not going to work. I'm going to turn it off and go for coffee and do something else. That's
I
just,
can watch
I
it
can watch
later.
it. Exactly. So, and as you pointed out at your event, if you're going to be doing it live, be live. Right now, you and I are recording this a couple weeks in advance of when it's going to air. We're having a great, real, spontaneous conversation, but I'm not trying to fool the people that are watching this into thinking that it's live, although it's very possible that you and I, or you or I, will be in the chat talking with people live while we do this,
Yeah.
because we like to do that. But I'm not trying to fool anybody that this is live. No tricks or anything. This is something that we did in advance. So the genuine part, the realistic, the doing it live, I think that's one of the key pieces. And one of the things that we also saw is that if it's an always in-person event, if there's a big in-person element, some of those in-person elements work both over video and in person. If you have an MC standing up on the stage and he's introducing somebody and you have somebody doing a keynote, there's no reason why that can't be both on the online version and in the live version. But then there are other things that they're doing in the live version that you can't do in the online version, and you kind of need to substitute. I know a couple of the shows that I did actually had the equivalent of a VJ or an online host that took over when things in person wouldn't work. There was an alternate or slightly changed thing where there was somebody actually talking live to the audience. Now, those are two of the elements that I thought were really awesome that improved the quality of what was going on. I don't know if you agree with those or disagree, or if you have any of
Oh
your
yeah,
own, but those are the key. We got to start coming up with like a playbook for this.
yeah. One thing, and I mentioned the Zoom event, and by the way, if I can promote, I just did a video on the Let's Do Video YouTube channel where I wrap up the Zoom event. It's called Zoom Wants to Be a $10 billion company because they told us that at the event. And by the way, my co-host for that we did that live is Tim Manting, and the reason he's my co-host is because I had so much fun talking to him at the event, which I normally wouldn't have done if I had attended it remotely. And I said we should do a thing together because we like talking to each other. So that ties into why to be there. But one thing they did at the Zoom event, the host was remote. The host was online. They had a screen up at the front of the room where we were in person, and we were looking at a online host. So the host was kind of with the remote people. And they also had an in-person host but the main host of the event was online. So it's not just, it takes what you said to the next level. It's not just having some sort of, it's saying this is online. I mean, this is an online event. But another thing that I think my big thing, if you're asking the big thing that we need to do to make these things work, it's changing our presentation style. Live online presentation is very different than in-person presentation. In-person presentation, I mean, it's live, but it's more like pre-recorded. I'm not going to get interrupted. I'm giving my presentation and I'm going to say, please hold questions to the end. Or if I want to do questions, it's when I want to do questions, I'll take a break for questions. And the audience sits there and they watch like they're watching a YouTube video. And now at the end, we get the interactivity and also the fact that it's live, it's more real like this. This is pre-recorded, but we're not going to really edit this. I mean, it's you and me. So we're just talking. If I say something, it's there, it's real. But online, we can take that to the next level because of chat. That's something I've learned from Twitch, from streaming on YouTube. And a lot of people are getting wrong. They're treating chat like an in-person audience. They're saying chat. And I talk to chat. I call them chat. I say, hi, chat. How is chat doing? Everyone in chat, I love you, chat. And if you're someone who's remote, that means you. And, I don't say to chat, please hold your questions to the end. I say, hit me with them. And it's a completely different kind of presentation because I'm not just reading my notes. I'm interrupting myself to say, I'm going through the 3 bullet points on how to set up a proper home work environment. Oh, wait, John from Michigan has a question about lighting. We're going to get to lighting in a minute, but I mean, it's more interactive. It's more real. It's more of a conversation, very different than in person. And it really works. It really makes it happen. They did a little of that at the Zoom event. They said, we have some questions from the remote people in the middle of the presentation.
Well, I also think that it takes a certain style to be willing to be interactive at a presentation. If some lecturers, some educators, some presenters have their shtick, and they're not going to veer from their shtick no matter what. You and I, and a handful of others in the industry will take that question. I tell everybody at the live panels that I do at conferences like the numbers I've done this year earlier is that here are 5 or 6 questions that I intend to ask you as a moderator. But if anybody in the audience has any question, I'm going to go to them first. That's more important. Engaging with the people that are watching, whether they're
Yes.
there in the room or whether they're online, that engagement is of much higher value and quality than anything that I'm going to come up with. So I'd rather, we defer to that. And again, that's a presentation style that comes part of, what you learn about public speaking. When I lifetime ago when I took my public speaking course in college, my first presentation was terrible because I was reading to the audience, and my instructor looked at me and said, "Why are you reading to us?" put the cards down and talk to us. And ever since somebody said that, yeah, okay, no problem. I can do that, and that's changed my entire presentation style for my entire career.
Yeah.
So it also has to be people that are willing to do that, or like I said, that it's sometimes a twofold thing. Some people are paying attention to what we're saying right now, which is awesome because I think there's a lot of value in it, and some people are paying attention to the conversation that's going on in chat, and they may cross, but sometimes they're just parallel, and sometimes they're wildly diverging, and you kind of have to keep them both going, and that keeps the interest of the audience.
Yep. And some people see that as a bad thing, but it's a beautiful thing. When chat starts interacting with itself, that means you have a community. Now you have a community, and that's the goal. That's where everything happens. And yeah, when I see chat talking to themselves, whether it's my guitar stream or a webinar I'm doing or whatever, oh, I get so happy. And you can get it. You can get in that conversation, and it's definitely a different skill. I mean, a lot of us have practiced doing presentations in front of a mirror, and don't throw me. I mean, it's a new way to do things, but there's so much benefit for the littlest work. If you're talking about I don't know, the biggest problem I had when setting up my hybrid environment was the lighting. Lighting was really tough for me. And someone says, "Oh yeah, lighting's hard," and you just say, "Oh, Fred in chat says lighting's hard." If Fred was thinking about logging off, he's going to stay for another 5 minutes. I just mentioned him and agree with him. And the 30 people that were thinking what Fred thought, it's just the littlest thing. Yeah, Fred said this. Right on, Fred.
Yeah, now
That's not that
you
hard,
hold up
but
the
it's so
magic
real.
mirror and talk about who's the do bees and the don't bees from my old romper room days. As long as you
Oh,
get
right,
everybody's
right.
name in there, everybody will watch. No, that's good. And I think you
Exactly.
and I probably owe this conversation some follow up. I don't know if you and I want to write together, a definitive guide or a blog or something about, how to continue with hybrid events in the world that no longer has a pandemic that we're all praying for. But it does require us boiling some of these things down, understanding what are the economic drivers of people who put on organizations that put on events. So we're not dissing what they're doing, but also how to add that other element to bring the rest of the audience involved that can't go or won't go, and
Mhm.
really make the conversations exciting as we keep going forward. So I guess that's something you and I can talk about offline and follow up on a post show or a post show post, I guess. And
One quick thought I
Sure.
just want to say for people who are kind of on the fence or listening to this saying, yeah, I see the value of online and interactive, but it's so scary and it's so much safer to do pre-recorded. And I have a lot of clients that just do pre-recorded stuff because they can approve it and put it up. Um, it's true and it's not true. On the one hand, I do a lot of pre-recorded videos and they're no stress because yeah, I'm going to make sure there's nothing goes out that I don't like. When I go live, yes, I get the adrenaline. I can feel my heartbeat. I can feel the blood flush. Yes, it is a little scarier. But once it starts, hitting that start streaming button is the scariest thing. 2 seconds into the stream, it's not scary at all because there's lower expectations. People know that you're live. We've when we first started going live, people expected us to be perfect because we're used to watching perfect presentations. But it's been a pandemic. We've been through it. If I make a mistake, if I mispronounce my own name, everyone's on my side because we've all had that happen to us. If I accidentally mute my mic it's fine. It's human. It's so much less stressful to be live and just be a person than have to try to be Tom Brokaw. I'm not Tom Brokaw. I'm David.
Well, think about a couple of years before the pandemic started, the video of the gentleman who's being interviewed by the BBC when his young daughter runs into the room, and our reaction to, oh my God, he must have, been having a cow, and the panic and everything. And as that happened to us during the pandemic, it was a wonderful thing. It was, oh, look, he's got a family and there's kids, turn them around, wave, say hi, tell us what, we cherish the moments that show that we're more human, and that's
Yeah,
something
that
that
did
we
not hurt
missed
his
during the
career.
pandemic. No, it did not, but for different reasons. But my point is, we would have treated that episode completely differently. post-pandemic, because anything we can do in these conversations to show our humanity, to show our pets, to show our kids, our families that we have, foibles, that mistakes. Obviously, nobody wants to say something insulting that they shouldn't have
Oh
said,
no.
or reveal something that legally they can't say, or hurt anyone, or speak in. No one wants to make that kind of a mistake. But the mistake that shows, I'm human. I thought about this for a minute. My brain's going here, or you can look at the changes that I've made, to my pop culture background over the last few weeks. It's like all that stuff's cool. That's much better than a blurred background for me, because that shows my history and my humanity. As Pac-Man goes across the 14th time, and the clock is always wrong, because if I ever said it right, it would always be wrong, because nobody would know when I'm recording it now. It just works that way. But my point is human, and it's something that attracts viewers. It doesn't prevent them from joining. And I think that's probably the biggest lesson, is that it's okay to show our humanity, whether that's being honest in a conversation, or whether that's being honest about, hey, people can't make it to this. I really want them to be part of this because I care about them. And we have to do whatever we can to try and make sure that that moves forward.
Exactly. So those human moments aren't to be avoided. I'm not saying, spill your coffee on yourself on purpose so everyone's on your side. I mean, but don't be afraid of being live. It really is a lower expectation. You can be yourself. It sounds like the opposite, but it really is less stressful once you start doing it.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I had to change the close of a show that I did a few weeks ago, because the one I did live was wrong. I pronounced the gentleman's name wrong. I wound up still pronouncing it wrong 19 times. My buddy Osman. But I tried to do re-record a close, and it took me 4 tries to get it. If I was live, it wouldn't have been an issue. Whatever came out came out. But yeah, so that's something that we've
Literally
learned.
every video I do, recorded, I start up. Hi, my name is David Maldow, and in this video, I want. Hi, my name is. It takes 5 starts, and I've never had that happen to me when I'm live.
Absolutely. So the tricks of the trade of being live. So since we are recorded, but we're recording it live, David, tell people who might not know you how to find out more about Let's Do Video and how to reach out to you.
The easiest way is letsdovideo.com or Let's Do Video on Twitter. And I would suggest going to the YouTube channel. We've been putting some fun stuff up. Actually, can I give a quick shout out to our friends at Poly? Is that
I never object to that.
Poly sponsored a 3-video series, and I really appreciate what they're doing, because it's not. By the way, I have an unboxing of the P15 camera that has like 10,000 views now. It's doing really well. So if you're curious about the camera, go to Let's Do Video on YouTube and search for the P15. But they sponsored a series of 3 videos. 2 of them are out. You can see them on the YouTube channel. Advanced tricks with the streaming software I use, and I think that shows that Poly isn't just about the hardware and the cameras, but it's about the people that are using them. They know people are starting to do these kind of creative things to promote their businesses, and they want to help by sharing these tricks. The tricks are pretty simple. You see the way my lower third slid into the thing there. With the default software that I'm using OBS. That's what all streamers pretty much. Most streamers use OBS. Things just fade in and fade out, and I have a trick to make things move. In fact, I can even make myself move. If I was going to put myself with Dave here, instead of I usually have a PowerPoint, but Dave, you're my PowerPoint now.
Scary.
I could move myself to left and right if I'm in the way of my PowerPoint, as opposed to fading. Little tricks like that add fun to streams. The second tutorial is how to do 3D skewing. And I think I showed this before, but have some 3D things. And there's, if you see the video, I have better tricks. I make myself 3D, and little things like that can add to a presentation. We're going to be living on, even with the pandemic over, we're going to be living on video a lot. So we want to be as effective and fun and impactful as we can. And I appreciate Poly working with me to help share these kind of things.
David, thank you very much. I appreciate the kind words, and I appreciate you being my guest, as you have been many times. But that's it for this week's Poly Weekly News. For all of my colleagues at Poly, I'm David Danto, your host. Thanks very much for watching, and we'll see you next week.